YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki, stop demonetizing all of my videos.
Mr. Reagan.
So immediately after the new adpocalypse, the whole Steven Crowder, Carlos Maza situation, I looked at all my YouTube videos and I noticed something interesting. I had not been hit by the adpocalypse, or so I thought. I just looked at my videos again today and they're all demonetized. I mean, not all of them. There are a few left for me to cling on to a couple of pennies here and there, but it is ridiculous. I am not a right-wing conspiracy theorist crazy person. I'm like a normal conservative voice on YouTube. Several of my videos like legitimately tackle the concept of like why racism is wrong, right? Why we shouldn't bully people, stuff like that. Like I'm the kind of person who says, all right, let us speak reasonably to the left. I'm one of the few people on the right that still think that I can find common ground with a leftist. I try to be nice, and it's just, to me, it's completely mental that somebody like me would get demonetized, but I'm a little guy. I'm a little guy, right? And Steven Crowder's a big guy, right? And so what you did with the Steven Crowder situation is you made him richer, right? And nothing against Steven Crowder getting richer. Yeah, great. Steven Crowder, you could be a billionaire. I couldn't be happier for you, right? Steven Crowder's awesome. He's doing awesome things for, I think, politics. I think you're doing more for politics than I am. You know, I watched some of those Change My Mind videos, and my first thought was, damn it, why didn't I think of that? I mean, just pure envy, jealousy, and hatred. Okay, maybe not hatred, but certainly envy and jealousy. It was a brilliant move, man, and a lot of the stuff that Steven Crowder does is brilliant, and some of it's a little bit provocative, but that's the point. You need to be provocative sometimes to break through the clutter, right? That's something that we talk about in marketing. Break through the clutter. There's a lot of clutter out there. There's a lot of ads constantly bombarding you. Allow me to jump in here for a second to plug my Twitter and my Instagram. I've really upped my Twitter game lately, so if you're on there, make sure you find me. I'm at Mr. Reagan USA. So go to Twitter right now if you can and follow that. That's a big priority for me at the moment. The Instagram is more for like funny memes, stuff like that. So if you like that sort of thing and you're on Instagram, follow me there. Also, I've got a podcast now. It's really just the YouTube show in audio only form. All the same stuff as the YouTube show, but without my face, which is, let's be honest, sometimes better. And now it's time for the most exciting and entertaining part of the show, the part of the show that no one ever skips ever, because it's just so fun. The part where I sell you stuff. But actually, this stuff is worth thinking about, because who doesn't love awesome coins? And now there's a new one. Did you know that every year the US Mint releases new coins into its America the Beautiful 5-ounce coin series? This has been running since 2010, and they cover the kinds of things that make America great, like our national parks and landmarks. Check out the size. Look how big this thing is. This is crazy. And it's absolutely beautifully sculpted. It's very cool and very heavy and very awesome. These slices of American history and heritage are difficult to get a hold of, and they're selling out quick. Incredibly, Noble Gold has managed to secure some, and as an Independence Day special, they're doing a combo of their own best-selling Trump 2020 Freedom 1-ounce silver coin with one of the America the Beautiful coins at a discount of $25 for the two during July, or until they sell out of these coins. This is a generous offer and unbeatable value for such special and rare coins. Go to Trump2020.com and use the code Reagan25 to secure yours today. The link, as usual, is in the description below. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming. But you see, this is the problem with somebody like Crowder getting into a very high-profile fight with somebody like Carlos Maza. Those two guys benefit, right? They both benefit from the fight. Both of their companies are going to make more money because of the exposure. But then somebody who's not in the fight, like me, a smaller YouTuber, and even smaller YouTubers than me, who don't even have any advertisers, and they're really just dependent on that YouTube advertising income they get directly from YouTube. We're the ones that really get screwed from things like this. And I don't blame Steven Crowder. I mean, this was not his fault. I mean, more power to him, as they say. I wish him all the success in the world. But the people like Carlos Maza, they're the really despicable people. And if you think this is some kind of like accident with Carlos Maza, no. I'm going to show you here why what he did was completely intentional. He totally wanted not only Steven Crowder to be kicked off of YouTube, he wants everyone he disagrees with to be kicked off every form of media possible. Seriously, he did a whole TED Talk on this, and I'll get into that. And of course, the other entity that I blame in this whole scenario is YouTube. YouTube, why are you demonetizing my videos? You're crazy. This is a war. The left has declared war on the right in terms of media platforms. And this is not a place where the war should be fought. The war should be fought in terms of ideas, not in terms of who gets to speak. And the reason I'm singling out Susan Wojcicki is not because I think that Susan Wojcicki herself is a nefarious character. I actually think she is relatively well-intentioned. Now, I might be wrong about that. She might be secretly, a very despicable person. But it looks to me like she's somebody who's really genuinely trying to balance ethics with good business practices. And if that's true, if she's as well-intentioned as I think that she is, good for her. I don't blame her personally for any of this directly. However, indirectly, I blame her completely. Okay, now what do I mean by that? What do I mean by indirectly blaming her? YouTube is made up of hundreds of employees, maybe thousands of employees, I'm sure. And all of these thousands of employees have some degree of power. And somebody has to hire those people. Somebody has to manage those people, right? And somebody has to hire those managers. And somebody has to manage those managers. And then somebody has to manage them. And somebody has to manage them. And the buck stops with her. The buck stops with Susan Wojcicki. Susan, you have to go through and fix your company, okay? You have a bunch of left-wing bigots at YouTube, and they're censoring the crap out of the right, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it.
What you saw in the early part of the year, around 40 to 50% of YouTube's news and politics recommendations were to independent channels like mine. And then you see that even 50-50 split imploded. And lately, 75% and climbing are legacy corporate TV cable channels. This includes CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. The degree of inequality is stunning.
Look, I'm not saying that there might not be an occasional right-wing person going in and censoring leftist stuff on YouTube, but I don't hear the left complaining about this. Right? The only people that I hear complaining about this are people like me on the right who are getting all their videos demonetized because what? Because somebody at YouTube just decided, oh, here's somebody I don't like. No. Or maybe you guys are setting up the algorithm in such a way that it demonetizes all right-wing content. I don't know. I don't know what the keywords are. I don't know any of it because it's all opaque. Nothing's transparent with you guys. You have a secret sauce that's supposed to determine who's dangerous and who isn't. Listen, YouTube, I'm not friggin' dangerous, all right? Yes, I'm yelling at you. Yes, I'm pissed off. Yes, I'm frustrated, but I'm not a dangerous person. Like, the vast majority of YouTubers are just trying to communicate effectively, their ideas with other people who might also have good ideas, right? And we're trying to have an interchange of ideas. That's the whole point of like America, the Western civilization, science, all of these things, politics. We're all trying to just have discussions to find the best ideas. Stop censoring us. You guys drive me crazy here. All right, let me talk a little bit about this Carlos Maza guy. So he goes in and he tries to get Steven Crowder kicked off of YouTube because Steven Crowder is calling him a lispy Queer, right? That's what he's calling him. And so he's like, okay, we're going to try to get Steven Crowder off of here because he's a homophobe or something like that. But this really isn't just about Steven Crowder. Like I said before, Carlos Maza did an entire TED Talk. I don't know how he got on a TED Talk about this particular issue. Let me play a little bit of that for you.
Adolph Ox, the founding publisher of the modern New York Times, once wrote that a responsible newspaper must present all sides of a controversial issue and let readers decide the truth. It doesn't try to tell you what to think, who to believe, certainly not who to vote for. It just presents you with the debate and lets you figure it out. But journalism is not just about facts. Journalism is about justice. It's about morality. It's about right and wrong, good and evil. Refusing to name evil for what it is not a neutral act. Treating xenophobia or transphobia or Islamophobia as just one side of a political debate is not a neutral act. It's a choice that actively aids those who want to make evil and bigotry seem normal. It signals to the audience that reasonable people can disagree about this stuff, and by extension, that evil and bigotry are reasonable positions to hold. Journalists are gatekeepers. We help decide what is and isn't worthy of public debate, and that means answering big, messy questions about power, justice, good and evil, what actually matters, and maybe most importantly, what kind of a world we want to live in. But that's a judgment call that most news networks are terrified to make. The idea of blacklisting an entire political position, a political party, of calling someone a liar is anathema to news networks that are terrified of being accused of bias. But it's worth remembering that neutrality in the face of evil and bullshit is its own kind of bias. And it's a choice that leaves audiences at home to fend for themselves at a time when demagogues and hate mongers are most eager to fill the void we leave behind. Thank you.
So Carlos Maza's fundamental idea within this TED Talk, and I think his concept about how media should be, according to this TED Talk, is that there are legitimate ideas that can be expressed on high-profile channels, like television channels and popular YouTube channels. And then there are these illegitimate sources, or the liars, essentially. Like, he's talking about how people lie a lot, right? And his theory is that we should divide up the legitimate news sources from the illegitimate news sources and say, these are the only people that get a voice. So, but here's the problem with Carlos Maza's philosophy. Who determines who the legitimate news sources are and who the illegitimate news sources are? Now, he kind of briefly says this in his TED Talk. He says that we're supposed to be the gatekeepers. We, right? The press, the media, journalists and editors and that kind of stuff. But here's the problem with that. You're all leftists. Of course you think you're right. If you have a whole bunch of people with a sort of monolithic philosophical mindset or political mindset, and you don't allow other ideas in, you're never going to learn. You're never going to grow. You're never going to be exposed to anything other than what you think is right. And what you think is right probably isn't right all the time. And I can tell you, for one, I think probably most of what you think is right is wrong. Right? There are other people with other perspectives. That does not make them illegitimate. That does not make them liars. There are tons of people on CNN that lie every day. I do a segment called I Love the View, or I talk about how the women of The View lie every day. I mean, should I then determine who gets to be on television and who doesn't? Carlos Maza, should that be my responsibility, since I'm obviously able to see who's lying and who is not? And you don't cover those people. Obviously, you're not aware that those people are lying blatantly all the time, every single day. Honestly, I haven't watched a lot of your videos, but I'm sure if I did, I could find a lot of instances where you either reported something that was incorrect or that maybe even things that you clearly lied about. I'm sure I could find things. You might disagree with me about that, but that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point. The whole point is I have a perspective, you have a perspective. That's why we allow people to discuss their different perspectives so that we can all figure out who's right and who's wrong. This whole gatekeeper idea, sure, there should be gatekeepers to keep out complete and total lunatics. Now I can agree with you to an extent. Right? Obviously, there are some people with really crazy radical ideas that are completely pointless and don't help to further any kind of a discussion. But those are people that the left thinks are illegitimate and the right think are illegitimate. Those are people that pretty much everyone agrees is illegitimate. You can't just say, well, because we on the media, who are these sort of noble leftists, because we know who's legitimate and who isn't, we get to decide. Now, here's a point that I bring up fairly often. I say, look, who are the people that invite debate, that invites opposing perspectives? Is it the left or the right? All right, this isn't a tough question, but I'm going to answer it for you anyway. It's the right. We invite diverse perspectives to debate with us. Carlos Maza, you make the point in your TED Talk that conservatives want to debate because they want the platform that leftists have. We want to get on, say, MSNBC or CNN or one of these major platforms in order to debate you guys.
Anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, lunatics on YouTube, they all make the same exact demand. Debate me. What are you so afraid of? Put me on your show. They recognize that as soon as the referee lets them play, as soon as a journalist invites them to say whatever they want to say to millions of people on a national audience, they won.
But the truth is, we actually have big platforms of our own. We've got Fox News, and on Fox News, they invite people to debate them on Fox News who are fairly reasonable, rational, well-respected people on the left. On Fox News, the highest platform that we have on the right, we invite well-established, respected leftists to debate us. People on the right on Fox News do that, okay? On CNN, they have, You show this panel on CNN of like 8 people. There's 8 people up there. How is anybody going to understand what the truth is if you have 8 people with different perspectives?
Trump says something truly bonkers during a campaign speech. Assemble an 8-person panel on prime time to argue about it for an hour. You guys see these CNN panels? There are 8 people on the screen right now. If you've ever actually tried to watch one of these CNN segments, you know that you might start feeling pretty sure that you know what they're talking about. And after 10 minutes of them screaming, you have no idea what's going on anymore.
Well, I'll tell you how CNN does that and how they manipulate people. They don't have 8 people up there with different perspectives. They have 7 people up there with the same perspective and 1 person with a different perspective, maybe 2, right? And usually those perspectives are not that of like a strong conservative. They're usually that of a rhino or somebody with a mixed views, with a few conservative positions. This is a trick that CNN likes to use all the time. They find somebody who really hates Trump, and then they'll bring, but it's a conservative, right? They're like pro-life, and they're, maybe they're for smaller government or something like that, but they hate Trump. And they bring him on and they go, you're a conservative. What do you think about Trump doing this? And they're like, oh, Trump's despicable here. I mean, I'm a conservative. Even I can tell you. Yeah, well, you brought on a conservative who hates Trump. I mean, that's a trick that they use. Carlos Maza, your entire perspective on giving conservatives a platform to speak is ridiculous. First of all, the left doesn't do that, so it's not a problem anyway on your side. Secondly, the right does that for you. We give you guys platforms all the time. And I think that it says a lot that the right constantly gives the left platform to speak, and the left never gives the right platform to speak. Now, honestly, I do think that sometimes you guys are afraid that you're legitimizing something that is, obviously false to you. But we think that you're obviously false, and we still give you platform. I, for one, invite leftists onto my show all the time. It's like pulling teeth, to be honest. I mean, there's 3 people in particular that are good friends of mine in Los Angeles. I keep begging them to come on my show because I think they have fascinating perspectives. None of them will come on. None of them will talk to me. It's much easier to get other YouTubers to come on your show, and so I do think that I'll maybe start doing a little bit more of that. But yeah, it's tough sometimes getting leftists to come on my show because honestly, I think leftists are sometimes a little bit scared of presenting their arguments to the world and having the world just laugh at them. Because a lot of your positions are totally laughable. And that's not my fault. I'm sorry. Just stop having ridiculous positions, okay? All right, so Carlos Maza complained about Steven Crowder. He wanted to get him kicked off of YouTube. But let's see what he actually said about this.
A person with 4 million subscribers was calling me a lesbian queer unsolicited in front of a massive audience, and I had to deal with the abuse that resulted in it. YouTube is looking at clear examples of abuse and saying, it's not bad enough. In my gut, there was like this bullied gay teenager that thought, I have all the evidence, I've done my work, I exposed myself to the public, I've used YouTube policies and by the letter of those policies, and this has to work. Like, how could any decent human who says they care about queer people not react to this? And it wasn't enough. You have to be willing to accept people criticizing you for being gay and for being Hispanic. That's an insane policy. YouTube knows it's insane. They know that this isn't something they're planning to enforce. They're making excuses to avoid doing the difficult thing, which is dealing with a monster that they spent years creating. If there aren't policies to protect us from abuse, we don't have meaningful access to speech. And that speech should be valued more than the speech of someone who's using the platform to call someone unsolicited a lesbian queer for 2 years. That is not valuable speech. That's not worthy of protection.
So now Carlos Maza claims that Steven Crowder is being a bigot, right? He's being homophobe or whatever. He's being mean to me. He's calling me lesbian. I don't understand. But the problem is that he's not considering the substance of Steven Crowder's arguments. Yes, Steven Crowder is doing it in a sort of bullying style. He's being a little bit mean to Carlos Maza, right? But Steven Crowder is not that mean. I mean, there's some way worse people on YouTube.
Islamic fundamentalist sex dolls. Do they blow themselves up?
Well, Gary, if you want my comeback, you'll have to scrape it off your mum's teeth. If you're scared of pedophiles, grow up. Every night after the show, I have attractive women banging on my dressing room door, and sometimes I let them out. They say that laughter is the best medicine, so maybe, just maybe, if we all keep laughing at people in wheelchairs. I remember one year she made me this burgundy monstrosity, sleeves way too long, and in the front she'd embroidered "Blacks Go Home." I said, I'm not wearing that. It's burgundy.
And worse things have been said about Mohammed, I feel sure. I mean, they'd have to pray 5 times a day because the has got Alzheimer's, presumably. Oh, God, the God I don't believe in makes do with Christmas and Easter. He's just not that needy.
I often get this with comics
do it to me.
in Montreal or at Edinburgh. When you're around comics, they come up, they say, "Listen, I wrote this joke about raping a baby." I can't tell that joke, but maybe you could. And you go, "Have you seen my act? It's not that bad."
What is
the last 15 minutes?
What is the most offensive joke that you've ever written?
If only Africa had more mosquito nets, then every year we could save millions of mosquitoes from dying needlessly of AIDS. Wow.
All right, and take note of the view counts on these videos. I mean, this is ridiculous. Obviously, YouTube is not constricting the views on these videos. And these videos, this is way worse than anything Steven Crowder has ever said ever in his life, some of this stuff. And this is the kind of stuff that YouTube's fine with, but if Steven Crowder calls a guy lispy, suddenly I get demonetized? What the hell, YouTube? What is that about? Some of the stuff that people say on YouTube, like I didn't even find the worst stuff. There's stuff that's way worse than the stuff that I just played. And I didn't put it on here because I find it so offensive, I don't even want to put it on my channel. But YouTube has no problem putting that stuff. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. The problem is you get these leftists who have decided to use some kind of minority status or some kind of identity status as a weapon, right? Or an accusation that somebody is hateful toward their group as a weapon. So it works something like this. If you ever criticize a gay guy, suddenly you're a homophobe. If you ever criticize a black guy, suddenly you're a racist. If you ever criticize a woman, you're a misogynist. If you criticize the immigration policy, you just hate immigrants, right? You're a xenophobe. So like Barack Obama used this, for instance, right? So when Trump was saying that maybe Barack Obama wasn't born in America, he wasn't an American citizen, he wasn't eligible to be president, that was a legitimate concern. That could have been leveled against anyone of any race, white, black, whatever. But people looked at that and they said, oh, that's racist. And Barack Obama was like, yeah, that's a racist accusation. The people who are accusing me of this are racist. No, it's not racist at all. I mean, it could totally have been a white person that was suspected to have been born in the Netherlands. It didn't have to be. Everybody just assigns a racist motivation so that it's easier to condemn somebody. It's much, much easier to condemn somebody for being racist or homophobic or whatever. It's much easier to condemn them for that than it is to actually contend with the substance of their argument. Hillary Clinton did this by calling people sexist anytime they criticized her. Now, Kirsten Gillibrand is doing it anytime anybody says anything about her, sexist. And now lispy Carlos Maza is using it against Steven Crowder, and I'm suffering because of it. Thanks so much, Carlos Maza. You're a wonderful person. You know, another issue that we have in our society currently is that conservatives don't tend to be whiners. And this is actually a huge problem in terms of balance, right? Because what do they say? The squeaky wheel gets the grease. But conservatives typically don't whine and complain, at least not publicly, in the same way leftists do. So if you're on the fence or you don't know really enough about politics to know one way or the other who's right and who's wrong, and one side is quietly dignified and the other side is like whining and complaining all day, every day, people are going to start to listen to the whiner complainer group because they're going to think, well, if you're whining and complaining this much, there must be something wrong. No, they've just been conditioned to realize if they cry enough, mom will give them their bottle or whatever it is that they want. So we've got this problem in society where I do think that the bratty, spoiled kid is rewarded for whining and complaining and crying. And the whiny, crying kid is the left, right? And the right is, the right's dad. the right-wing people, conservatives, are dead. They're saying, look, this is how the world is. It's a tough place. This is the kind of real-world stuff we've got to do to make it a better place for us. And no, and the left is still whining and crying for their toy, and the left-wing politicians are giving it to them because they're mom, essentially. And you know, it's funny, Carlos Maza whines and complains, and I've been attacked in the same way Carlos Maza has. I mean, if you go to the Young Turks and watch, they've done a video about how horrible I am. I think Cenk's nephew did this whole video about how I'm like, a complete idiot, and that guy's mental. I mean, he just went off the rails. Everything he could criticize, possibly, he just went off. I mean, it was all about like my looks and like how I speak and blah 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 blah, everything. And then Snopes came out with this article that said we've debunked the AOC video. They didn't debunk it all. It's just absolute left-wing propaganda. But it's a hit piece. I mean, it's hit pieces against me. And the hit pieces I do complain about because I don't think that's something we have to fight against for sure. But when people say that, I'm ugly or I don't speak well or blah, 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 I don't give a crap about that. I mean, people have said really cruel things, and I don't talk about it on my show. I don't whine about it. I don't go to YouTube and go, you're going to kick these people off. They're mean to me.
Calling me a lesbian queer unsolicited.
They're mean to me. I mean, I don't care. It's kind of great, right? Because what do they say? They say you only take flak when you're over the target, right? Or something like that, right? So if you're doing something that's provoking a response, it means you're doing something, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something good, but it does mean that you're doing something. So I'm provoking a response, and look, maybe I'm a huge detriment to the world, but I don't think so. I think and I certainly am not trying to be a detriment. I'm trying to do the best that I can to make this world a better place, to make it better for all of us. And so the attacks that these people level against me, I take that as a point of pride, okay? I'm getting to them. And that's good, because I don't think that they're a benefit to the world. I think that they are, in fact, a detriment to the world. And so if they're mad at me, that's fantastic, right? I don't mind if they're calling me all kinds of horrible names and saying terrible things about my family. That's great. Go ahead and do that, right? It just makes you look worse. And that's how Carlos Maza really should think. The way he should think is, if I'm taking flack, if people are attacking me, maybe I'm being somewhat effective. Actually, no, I think that the problem that Carlos Maza really has with Steven Crowder isn't so much that he calls him lispy. It's that he destroys his arguments like a boss. Steven Crowder destroys Carlos Maza intellectually. Carlos Maza produces left-wing propaganda. Steven Crowder debunks the left-wing propaganda. He destroys it very publicly, very visibly. That, to me, I think is probably more humiliating to Carlos Maza, a person who considers himself, I think, an intellectual. I think that is more offensive to him than calling him lispy. It certainly should be, because he is lispy. Now, let me say something else about the lispy thing. I don't think Steven Crowder makes fun of Carlos Maza's lispiness just for fun. I think that Steven Crowder ridicules the lispiness because he sees it as an affectation. So some people have a lisp, right? Or they stutter, right? This is a natural phenomenon that occurs with some people. An affectation is like a fake speech impediment. It's something that people do in order to give themselves character, right? To make them seem different or interesting. This is fairly common with some people that they just like to sound interesting or different, so they talk like this. And I think that this is what Carlos Maza does, and I think that it's right that Steven Crowder calls him out on it, because it's stupid. I don't think that when Carlos Maza was a little boy, he was like, "Mommy, can I have the toy, please? I really want the toy. Oh, my favorite Thawathon. I love this. Thank you, Mommy, for putting this on. This is so wonderful." I don't think that that's how Carlos Maza spoke as a little boy. I think that he invented that way of speaking in order to give himself some character that he thought was interesting. It just makes him look ridiculous, but that's, I think, probably what he was doing. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe he did grow up very effeminate, speaking with a lisp. I don't know. If that's true, then it's kind of cruel, maybe, what Steven Crowder is doing. But I don't think Steven Crowder is intentionally being cruel. I think he's calling him out on an affectation, which I think is a perfectly fine thing to ridicule. And as I said, people ridicule me all the time on YouTube. It's cool. I'm sure I'm going to get a bunch in the comments on this video too. And look, I understand YouTube's position, right? They want to make YouTube a safe and cozy and friendly place and happy for everybody. And they want to eliminate the really dangerous YouTubers and all this kind of stuff. And fine, okay, if you want to do that, I kind of get it. Problem is, if you're not doing that with surgical precision, you end up with a ton of collateral damage. And I am that collateral damage. And so I take this personally, and a lot of us do. And maybe I'm being too generous to YouTube. Maybe YouTube wants this kind of collateral damage. I think some people that work at YouTube certainly do. But I think you need to find those people and you need to cut them out of the company like a cancer. Anybody who works at YouTube who is intentionally trying to broaden the scope of censorship so it just gets rid of moderate conservatives like myself, those people need to be kicked out of YouTube, right? They're biased, they're bigots, they need to go. And it's on you, Susan Wojcicki, to do this, to make this happen. The truth is, no matter how well-intentioned Susan Wojcicki is or all the other people at YouTube, the problem is they do not have perspective. All right, if here is the line of politics, and over here is the far left, and over here is the far right, if you're standing here, you don't think that this is the middle. You think this is the middle. Everybody thinks that they're a moderate. Everybody thinks that they're sensible, they're rational, and where they are, that's the middle. So they think that like Antifa is a little bit left of them, and they think CNN is a little bit to their right. People over here in the middle are friggin' nut jobs, right? They think of moderates as crazy right wing. Fox is just lying, and pretty much everybody further to the right of Fox, they're just, everybody there is like a white supremacist. And so you don't have the perspective. Susan Wojcicki, you don't have the perspective to know what the difference is between a moderate conservative and a lunatic, okay, an extremist. And I don't think that anybody at YouTube has that perspective. So what you need to do at YouTube is you need to hire conservatives to regulate conservatives. If you're afraid of dangerous speech on YouTube, you need to bring in conservatives to regulate that side of YouTube, that part, that little section of YouTube where I am, the conservative area, that needs to be regulated by other conservatives. And you can have oversight by, you know, whatever leftist you want. But the truth is, only conservatives are really going to be able to tell you who the dangerous conservatives are, the really crazy people, and who the just rational, reasonable, normal conservatives are, because you are not accustomed to this kind of speech. The stuff that we talk about, you're not aware of. You don't know. You don't delve into this kind of thing. You're not an expert at this. You know who is an expert? Conservatives. We're an expert at conservative speech. So let us regulate ourselves. Hire some conservatives to do this. And stop demonetizing all of my videos. All right, well, that's it for me. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more like this, please subscribe and make sure you hit that the bell thing. And if you want to contribute to the channel, get on my PayPal and, you know, give like $1 a month or something like that. It would really help a lot. And if you hate me, you're probably Carlos Maza, but I'm okay with that, and so is everyone else. Nobody likes you, Carlos Maza. You know, I'm going to be nice for a second. I'm going to be nice. Really, I'm going to be nice. Carlos Maza, nobody wants to bully you, okay? Nobody wants you to be the gay kid in high school getting bullied, all right? I'm not happy with the bully thing. I was bullied when I was a kid. Really, I was seriously bullied when I was a kid, like terribly bullied, to the extent where my parents actually had to move across town so that I wouldn't be bullied anymore. And I was actually kind of mad about it because I liked the school I went to, despite the fact that kids were so cruel. So I understand. I understand that kids can be cruel. I understand that triggers some things in you. But you got to toughen up, man. You're like an old guy now. I mean, you look vaguely like an adult. All right, I'm just going to end it. Okay, good night.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism. Fascism is private enterprise, but total government control and regulation. Well, isn't this the liberal philosophy? The conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government. Get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.